Hey everyone, welcome back to Speech Tip Tuesday. Today our tip is going to be all about the R sound. I'm going to show you what a typical therapy plan would look like for a client starting out with the R sound, and then I'm also going to show you some techniques to help facilitate that correct R production. Keep in mind that R is one of the later developing sounds, so sometimes we're not going to see kids have the correct R emerge until somewhere between 6 to 8 years of age. So while we can always advocate for starting therapy early, it might not always be most beneficial to start with a young child who doesn't have a correct R yet, just because it could come in time. Around 6 years of age, if we're not seeing that correct R coming about, then we would definitely want to get started on therapy. But most of the time, kids who are older actually do much better with R therapy than those who start way younger. So I think I'll start first off with how to get that correct R production, because that might be what most of you guys have come to this video for. So the biggest thing that we're going to start with a client who just needs help with R in isolation is we want to really focus on lip rounding but not touching. Otherwise we get the W sound, but we're trying to get the R sound. So we don't want our lips to touch, and a lot of times kids are replacing R with that W sound, so we're really working on opening that mouth. So we're just going to practice that lip rounding first. Once the child or adult or whomever it might be working on this sound gets the lip open position for then we can move on from there, but that's definitely where we want to begin. A lot of times it's hard for kids who are used to making the W sound to not revert back to that, and so my tip for them is usually to try smiling, because when we can pull the corners of our mouths back, it helps from making that W sound. So we're going to go or whichever is easier for them. We're just trying to keep those lips open so we can get that correct R sound. The second thing we're going to do is figure out which way is going to be best for that client to make the R sound with their tongue. So there's actually two ways. There's a bunched R and a retroflex R. The bunched R is if this is your tongue and your mouth, here's your teeth and here's your throat. We're going to bunch it up and back like this. So essentially the top back end of our tongue we want to hit so we're just bunching it up. The other one's called a retroflex CR, and essentially your tongue tip is going to curl up like this. You're not actually going to touch the roof of your mouth with the tongue though, but it's going to sit in this position kind of hanging in the middle of your mouth, and so we're going to get that that way as well. Most people will naturally make a bunched R, and a lot of times when we teach the retroflex R, it will actually turn into a bunched R down the road. But sometimes for kids it can be much easier to teach that retroflex R because they can grasp that concept a little bit easier, and so a lot of times we find ourselves using this R in therapy. Either one is perfectly fine. It's kind of trial and error for a few sessions to figure out which one suits your client best. So just some tips to help you when you're doing R therapy either on yourself or with somebody else. It always helps to give that visual cue. So if they've chosen to work on the bunched R, every time there's that R sound, I'm going to do this with my hands. So we're saying bear, bear, and then sometimes I might go, oh, I didn't really hear the sound. I heard bear, bear, but I want to hear bear. So a visual cue just kind of helps, and same thing with the retroflex. See, I have to turn this way for my right hand. Bear, really emphasizing curling that tongue up. Another great tip is to try to use words that end with K and G. That's because it's going to help pull that tongue back. So if we say rake or rag, then it's already helping pull that tongue back. It's just great to start out with those types of words. Co-articulation can be really helpful when you're working at R at the end of a word. So you can say the bear rakes, car runs, and so you have those two R's kind of merging together. That can help facilitate that R at the end of the word, because it's actually kind of cruising into the beginning of the word for that client working on the R. The most important thing with R is that you just practice. The more repetitions the better, because R is a very tricky sound to correct. That tongue is very stubborn and wants to go to the position that it's used to, and so we have to retrain that muscle. And so drill. I typically send my clients home with homework. I don't really like to call it that, but I give them some incentive, treasure box or something, a game they want to play when they come back next week, if they can check off that they did it this many times a day, because a therapy session is only so helpful, but if you're not carrying over these things at home and practicing, then it doesn't become as effective in those 30 minutes. And so we really want that R to be practiced every single day. Usually when my clients come in, we even just warm up R over and over again before we start any additional therapy tasks on top of it. So we'll just do like 10 times, and then we'll do ear, air, I, or R, or, over and over and over again until that tongue is really warmed up and ready to go, and then we're going to start our words or sentences, whatever it is we're working on. It's very trial and error, as all things are in speech therapy, so what may work for one child might not work for the other, but by and large, visual cues help quite a bit. For younger kids, the pirate sound R can really help. And then one thing I really love to do with my clients is practice hearing it so that they can determine if they're making a correct R or not. So I will put a piece of paper or my hand in front of my face. I will say, tell me when you hear a good R and tell me when you do not hear a good R. Give me thumbs up or thumbs down is usually how I do it. Rake, wabbit. So that they can determine, did Miss Emily make that good R or no? And then what I'm going to have them do is try to trick me. So I'm going to say, put that piece of paper over your mouth, and I'm going to listen really close. And you try to trick me, but I bet you won't. They love this because they'll do wabbit, and I'll say, that was a good R. And they'll say, no, that was not a good R. So this is just a great way for them to help learn to hear their own sounds and pick up on it throughout the day so that they're more motivated and encouraged to fix it when they're not in the therapy session. So there are many ways that R appears in our speech and sentences from a day-to-day basis. We have what's called pre-vocalic R, which would be R at the beginning of a word. So rake, rat, robot, all of those are coming before the vowel, so we call that pre-vocalic. We have post-vocalic R, which would be ear, ire, air, or, all of those we have in words. We have intervocalic, which would be where the R is in between two vowels. So there's many different forms that R takes in our language, but for a child who has come in for our therapy, if they cannot produce an R in isolation, which would actually be the ER sound, then that is where we start. If they can produce R perfectly fine, maybe they're having difficulty with blends like BR, break, then maybe we would start there. If they have all of those things and they're really struggling with the vocalic R's, the ear, the ire, the air, the or, R at the end of the word, then that's where we would start. But if there's no R in isolation, we're going right back to the beginning. We're starting with R, and then we'll progress up from there. So just to go off of that, we will start with R sound alone, until we can get a correct production of that. Once we have that, we're going to put it at the beginning of words, or maybe just even a consonant vowel connection. So ro, re, ri, ray. And then once I have that, we can turn it into a full word. So rake, robot. And then once we have R really well in the beginning position of the words, we're going to put it in the medial. So we're going to do terrible or carrot. And then we'll move it to the end of the word, which is where we're going to be working on these vocalic R's. So bear, ear, hair, where it's at the end. And this can be sometimes the most difficult for young children anyways, but people working on R in general. So we always want to start with sound in isolation, then move up to the word level, then we can move up to phrase and sentences after that. So, did you see that bear? Or, my hair looks a mess today. I hope this video was helpful for you guys. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel so that I know these videos are helping you. And please comment or message me if there's something you'd specifically like to see me do a video on. I will catch you guys on Friday. Have a great week. Bye.